Welcome to A Fork in Time, the alternate history podcast.
Hi, good people. Welcome back to A Fork in Time. This is Chris Capola, and I am joined by our friend across the pond. Would you like to introduce yourself for a second?
Yeah. Hi, Chris. Hello. It's Helena Nash here. Hello there.
I say our friend across. You know what? I will say this.
Hmm.
You will forever be our friend across the pond.
Oh,
We did specifically take account of another listener across us. I guess the Irish Channel from you.
Yeah.
We would love to have them on as well. Reach out, please. We'd love to have it. We definitely want as many people involved as we can, but you were kind of the first person to reach out from outside the US.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Sure.
It's nice to be developing the special relationship. So, yeah, there's a term.
So today, you actually came up with the idea for today's episode. Do you want to kind of give us the overview of it?
Yeah. Okay. So this is one of the things that I'm interested in, which isn't always presidents and kings, battles, and big things like that. I lean towards some of the pop culture or cultural forks. So picture this: Hollywood, 1930, dawn of the talkies. There's a particular actor who has absolutely dominated certain movies in the silent era. He played the Phantom of the Opera. He played the Quasimodo in the Silent Hunchback of Notre Dame. He is known as the Man of 1,000 Faces. His name is Lon Cheney. In 1930, Lon Cheney dies at the relatively early age of 47 from an illness aggravates his throat. There's a number of things.
Let's say it's respiratory complications. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah. He was a number of things. He was a heavy smoker. He'd been in a movie in 1929, which gave him pneumonia. I think it was the same movie. It was called Thunder. Used fake snow. I can only speculate on what they used for fake snow back in the day.
Probably cigarette ash.
I was going to say asbestos. Yeah, it's going to be something grim. Suffice to say, poor Mr. Cheney did not see out the year of 1930. Massive bloke. He'd done his first talkie, a remake of his silent movie, The Unholy Three. By all accounts, his voice was every bit as versatile as his physical performance and his legendary skill with makeup. He could transform himself with, with putty, with wax, with wire, into the most astonishing faces. Just Google Phantom of the Opera. That's the picture with the almost missing nose. There's a film called London After Midnight when it looks like he's got filed down teeth. And for my money, one of his most amazing physical transformations is in a movie called The Penalty, where he plays a crime lord who's had both legs amputated. And we're not talking hiding your legs in a wheelchair. The man strapped his legs up behind his back and walked around in buckets on his kneecaps for the entirety of this show. And he was fit enough that he could pull himself up by his arms and drag himself up and around the set, kind of like a gibbon. So he was very versatile, very versatile.
Not only that, there's a movie, reading about him earlier myself.
Yeah.
He was in a movie about the United States Marines.
Yeah. He was,
yes.
wasn't he?
He
Tell it to the Marines.
Tell
It's
It to
called
the
Tell It to the
Marines.
Marines. I think,
As
yeah.
as if you're thinking about Brett of like acts that he's playing, he basically was almost a prototypical Arlie Ermy.
Arlie Ermy, right?
Yes,
yeah, exactly. I mean,
and
I've never seen that, but I don't know. Is that a 1926 version of
yes.
Full Metal Jacket?
I mean, you previously, and I'm sure we'll talk later about the Hayes Commission and things you can show. There are things you cannot show in 1926 that you can in 1989. That being said, I do kind of, when I was initially thinking about this and in my mind, I was thinking, well, okay, he died. He's a 1920s actor.
Yeah.
Their job is about to change because, and you mentioned he did his first talkie. He started out, I don't quite want to say vaudeville, but in like live theater. And so he actually had, I have a face for podcasting. He had a voice that would fit talkies, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I mean he was already iconic just from those posters, those distorted faces. I mean, he played regular folks as well, but
and played them well, which is why I mentioned that the Tell It to the Marines.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's get to what happens. He dies in this is the what was. He dies. It's 1930. In 1931, Universal Studios make Dracula. I think, I'm trying to think, a year or two later, they make Frankenstein. These are big breakout movies, not only for Universal, but also for a couple of actors by the names of Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff. They star in the various Dracula and Frankenstein movies. There's a little bit of a lull for a few years in horror. Then there's a resurgence of it by the late 30s, early 40s. Lugosi and Karloff do a load more horror movies. They want a Cheney. They don't have a Cheney. But wait, they do, because Lon Chaney's son, the former plumber, Creighton Cheney, takes to acting practically like the week after his father dies. There's something going on there, but I don't think we have time to dive into that. But Creighton Cheney takes up acting, becomes famously Lon Chaney Jr., plays the Wolfman. He plays I want to say George, but he's not George. Lenny, is it?
No,
Lenny.
Yeah.
Tell him about the rabbit. So yeah, right, in Mice and Man, and just a ton of movies. So there's your Lon Chaney Jr. And those guys, make a reasonable living. Lugosi, not so much as the other two, into the 40s, 50s, and in some cases, just about into the 60s.
They even cross over into music and do the Monster Mash, as I remember.
Well, I mean, the Monster Mash, right? So, okay, divergence. The Monster Mash is done, performed by, what is it? Boris Puckett and the Crypt Kickers. Why is he called Boris? Because Boris Karloff. What's the voice? It's the Monster Mash. He's doing a Karloff. Now, that is something I didn't realize as a child. I hadn't seen enough horror movies. Right. I knew the Monster Mash. And then later on, I thought, oh, yeah, if you want to go even later, go into the 80s, oh my God, Amityville. What is the song Amityville by Lovebug Starsky? He does a Boris Karloff impression, and that voice, that Monster Mash, that has become our go-to default mad scientist kind of Count Dracula, ghoulish host type voice, right?
Okay.
Boris Karloff has Lon Chaney Sr.'s death to thank for his career. Karloff was great. Karloff was already working. He'd been working in movies since the 1912, I think. Certainly acting since 1912. But he gets his big break because Chaney Sr. dies. And arguably, Chaney Jr. goes into acting because his father dies. So that's what happened. Our Falk let's just say that Mr. Cheney does not inhale the horrendous materials that goes into making the fake snow in the movie Thunder in 1929. Let's say he dodges that bullet. It doesn't exacerbate his bronchial or respiratory condition. He does not die at the very young age of 1947. He is, if not healthy enough to continue acting.
He's as healthy as any 50-year-old in the Great Depression is.
Right. He's probably still smoking like a chimney, but hey, it was a different time. So yeah, it's late 1930. Lon Cheney lives. Cheney lives! Exclamation mark. It would probably say on posters. This has effects on movies, and the most obvious effect is going to be with those iconic early 30s Universal horror movies. So there's two. There's Dracula, and then there's Frankenstein. And I got a feeling that Dracula was 1931, and Karloff in Frankenstein, I'm just trying to remember. I got a feeling it was, also 31. What a year, 1931. What a year. Both Universal movies, right?
So the question I have is this.
Yeah.
I don't know how well he does a call it generic Central European accent.
Right.
Because technically Dracula is, at least in our minds, he's Transylvanian, which at this point is Romania. At some point, not too long ago, it was Austrian. It's going to become Hungarian. And then it's going to go back to Romanian. So let's just call it generic Central European accent.
Yes, as you say, GCEA. And incidentally, Lugosi, he's Hungarian. He's in totally in the right place. Instantly, I think he had to get out of Austria-Hungary because he was in an actors' union or something like that. So it's one of the reasons he ended up in America. But you're right. Cheney apparently had a great voice. Is he good at doing accents? I think not. Does Cheney get to play Dracula? I'm going to say no. Two reasons. One, which you just said, Chris, which is that possibly doesn't have the accent, but more than that, Lugosi had been playing Dracula on stage. He'd been playing it in I think he'd been playing it on Broadway. He'd certainly been it was a big name. He transferred his Dracula show over to the Universal movie in 1928. It was a big name. People were going to see this guy. So I think Dracula, Lugosi's still there. He's a shoo-in. Is there another role in that for Cheney? If anything, they might have got him in to play Van Helsing. I can see that. Thinking back to the role, the only other role that one would play potentially is Renfield, which is a great character role. I think it's Dwight Frye. Frye. I think, interestingly, Dwight Frye, if it's the guy I remember, he also plays the not Igor in the first Frankenstein movie, whose name is something just like Hans. I can't remember. But Dwight Frye was a great actor, but he tended to play men who go mad. I can see in Dracula Cheney possibly getting the role of Renfield, which is a smaller part, but it's a bit of a scene stealer. But which is all well and good. But the big difference is going to be when we get to the other big movie, and that's going to be Frankenstein.
Because Lugosi, if I am the casting agent and I am deciding who to cast where, when I hear Frankenstein, when I hear Dracula, I want generic Central European accent and kind of an ability to play kind of aristocratic.
Yeah.
Frankenstein,
Lugosi, 100%.
Frankenstein is a bit more heavier on, and we've danced around this term, but I'm still going to use the term special effects.
Yeah.
Because,
absolutely.
Go ahead and talk about that.
Right. So we got So Universal are going to be developing Frankenstein, and uh, popular the popular myth goes that had he been alive, Cheney would have played Frankenstein's the monster, and I see no reason why we should buck that trend here. He would be their first choice any day of the week. What does that mean for the movie? First off, it's going to mean that Frankenstein's monster looks different. Because the Frankenstein monster makeup that we know, the flat head, the bolts at the side of the neck, that's a creation of Jack B. Pierce. Jack Pierce, the legendary makeup artist for Universal Studios. Look him up. He's got quite a look. He's got the white buttoned up tunic. He kind of looks like a dentist. Like a little moustache, buzz cut hair. By all accounts, very intense, some might say grumpy man, who would laboriously create most of the iconic makeups in the early days of Universal Horror. And it would be painstaking. They'd be putting layers of wax and putty on, in the original timeline, Boris Karloff's face. Collodion, I think, is the thing they used when they were later making the Mummy. Again, these things that would encase the actors in it. So Jack Pierce was the makeup artist. But in our timeline, Lon Cheney doesn't use a makeup artist. Lon Cheney is the makeup artist. He's the man of 1,000 faces. Just look him up online. If you look for pictures of him, yes, you'll see you'll see the Phantom of the Opera. You'll see the London After Midnight. You'll see Hunchback, but you'll also see a grinning Lon Chaney with his makeup box. It's his legendary makeup box. He did his own makeup. And when I say makeup, I don't just mean he did a bit of powder and paint. He really went to town. He used wire to pull his nostrils back in Phantom of the Opera. He put weights on his body to dislocate the way he walked. Like I say, he bent his legs backwards and strapped them to his back and put his knees in buckets to play a double amputee. I don't know what Cheney's Frankenstein would have looked like, but it would not have been old flat top. It would have been some other look. It would have been equally eye-catching. He may have, for example, leaned more into the patchwork look of the monster. The idea that is mentioned in Shelley's novel, that he is made from multiple parts. You don't really get that idea in the movie that we see with Karloff. Yeah, he's like a big guy and he's sort of more in proportion. I can see Cheney's Frankenstein monster being more misshapen, lopsided, one eye in a different place, maybe a little bit more like his Hunchback of Notre Dame, distorted. Possibly harder for people to dress up as on Halloween in years to come. That may be one legacy.
Do you still get bolt neck? This is my question.
Well, it's a very good question. I think, Chris, I think you've come to the most important question of the night. Do you? I think they still, because they wanted somewhere to. They wanted to activate him with electricity. It's part of the movie. Cheney does not get to change the script. He just gets to choose the look. There's going to be electricity.
Okay. There
are going to be bolts. I think at one point they were going to place the bolts on the temples. I got half a feeling that was one of the original plans. Yeah, exactly. Like horns, like Hellboy. Okay. I suspect, and I think you do see that in some other interpretations of the monster. It could well be that he gets bolts on his at his temples rather than his neck. But you're going to get it. You're going to get the rest of the movie is going to be the same. You're going to get some incredible lines, some iconic look. But Cheney's still on top of the world. The movie poster probably just says Cheney because, like in our timeline, I don't think the original Frankenstein poster even identified Karloff as the actor. I think at the end it says the monster. You get a cast list at the end, and it says the monster ? Because Universal wanted to keep it mysterious. They're not going to get that chance with Lon Cheney. He's already famous. They're going to lean into that It's going to say Cheney on the posters, and it's going to cement his career going into the talkies. He's in Frankenstein, the original Frankenstein, he doesn't get to say much. In Frankenstein, in the Bride of Frankenstein, the creature does get to talk, right, with some great lines. So we won't get to hear too much of Cheney's voice, but he'll be there. Frankenstein will be a big movie, or he was. It'll look different. There's a big impact on one particular actor, and that is poor Boris Karloff, William Henry Pratt of Enfield, Middlesex. He has been in America since like 1912. He's been acting for a good 15 years. He's been in quite a few movies. Frankenstein was his big breakout hit. It got him out of playing secondary characters, what you might call slightly exotics, because he had Indian heritage, so he was playing slightly exotic characters in various dramas. But it was Frankenstein that gave him his big hit, and he became single name Karloff. Karloff in all those posters. We're not getting that. Boris is left out in the cold, probably still playing bit parts and supporting actor roles, and so what we're not going to get is that flurry of movies like The Old Dark House, The Ghoul, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, and just a ton of others with Boris Karloff doing a variety of amazing roles. And there's a great movie called The Black Cat. There are several movies called The Black Cat. It's a great one with him and Lugosi in a very modernist 1930s house. It's a pre-Hays Code movie, which means there's some absolutely fascinating stuff in there to do with dead wives being kept in glass cabinets and all sorts of exciting things. We may be denied Karloff in some of those movies in our new Cheney timeline, Chris. So, yeah, that's where our fork is going right now.
So let's take it to the other. I think this is a really interesting place where we wound up going on our own. You mentioned that in the movie poster for our timeline's Frankenstein, Karloff isn't mentioned.
Karloff
isn't Karloff yet.
No, indeed. This is the making of him, as it were.
And you also said that is not going to happen if you have Cheney in there.
Correct. Yep.
Because Cheney is such a big star. And we talked about who's making that kind of decision. It's the studio system.
Yep.
And we talked about what would happen if Cheney survives and how would he play and deal with the 1930s studio system.
Yeah. So he's a big name, right? And Frankenstein is going to push him into that next bracket up. Let's say he even gets to steal a couple more of Karloff's early 30s roles. There's a couple of things that are going to happen that are going to affect movies generally. By the mid-30s, by 1934, I think the Hays Code comes in, or at least the Hays Code is properly enforced in 1934, and that clamps down on some of the excesses.
What is the Hays Code?
Okay, so the Hays Code is, and this is where I'm going to say very quickly because I haven't got a huge amount of knowledge. It's essentially the guidelines or the censorship that is going to clamp down on certain elements of movies. They were worried about the horror. They were worried about nudity. They were worried about crime paying in movies, and a couple of other things. Marlene Dietrich in a dinner jacket, romancing a woman. These sorts of things were deemed unwholesome by the Hays Code. Instantly, that's an American only, obviously code. There was something similar in Britain, but slightly different.
It's also a matter of if right now at this point, if the rules apply to movies, I'm not even going to say produced in the United States, shown in the United States. As a business, you are going to make sure you can produce. It's very much like today, certain movies have been edited to comply with Chinese regulations.
I was going to say.
You're going to make your movie. And so just because the United States made this rule, it's going to affect international movie making. Plus the fact that the United States is a major source of movies.
Absolutely. And whilst there were, thriving British studio systems and German and French in the 20s and 30s, there was a lot of reliance on US distribution. So the Hays Code is going to make a difference, and in our timeline, it does. Outright horror movies do suffer. They're forced to become a little cleverer, perhaps, and we're talking 1930s standards of what is deemed horror, which is perhaps a little milder than what we're used to today. But even so, it had an effect on movies. And in our timeline, horror movies fell out of fashion for a little while. Then the late 30s, they had a resurgence with there was a particular movie house, and it may have been in New York, it was running a triple bill of King Kong, Dracula and Frankenstein, I think. And America and the cinema-going public rediscovered horror movies. Universal and a couple of the other studios got back into horror movies, and they produced all of the other classics that we know: Wolfman, all of the rest of the Karloff Frankensteins, all of the rest of the Draculas, and culminating in such classics as Abbott and Costello Meet the Wolfman, which is a great movie. It is a great movie. So that all happened. What happens in our Cheneyverse? What happens in the Cheneyverse? Well, a couple of things. He's going to be butting heads with a studio system that's trying to shut down a lot of his creativity. Here's a guy who is pushing the envelope in terms of what you can portray physically with makeup. I think want to do a lot of that.
I'm thinking a little bit about The Heart of Darkness. The movie about the making of Apocalypse Now. Where that director very much had a vision of an artistic product. And that may have been divorced from the idea of an economical money-making product.
Very much so. Very much so.
Basically, Cheney and all of these other actors are going to get into producing interesting stories and producing good visual, and especially now that they're able to actually merge the visual motion pictures with sound recording and all of these things, they're going to want to be pushing that artistically. And we talked a little bit about looking at the Wikipedia page for both Cheney, the father, and the son. They're doing 3 or 4 movies a year. They are basically, the studio system has them on the lot. This is a regular job for them. These are not movie stars hanging out in the Hollywood Hills. They are always on set. And at this point, the studio system requires that. So he's going to butt heads about that.
Because what we've got in this timeline, which you don't in the original timeline, is horror's biggest gun. Cheney, established in a way that the others aren't. And he's just, let's just say that he is the tipping point. He's that extra voice who, when the studio's under pressure from the Hays Code, push back, say, do you know what? I know what I want to do. I know what roles I want to play. And I'm a big name. And there are things I want to explore. There are things like the characters I want to play. I'm going to go on.
And we also, not to leave this out, he brings a skill set. He's not just an actor.
Not just an actor. He is a pioneer. He's a pioneer in makeup. And and what we might call special effects, but physical effects. Physical effects, right? He's going. It is not beyond the realm of possibility that Lon Cheney Sr. says, I'm going to take my money, I'm going to get some investors, I'm going to set up my own studio, and I'm going to make the movies I want to make.
Because this has already been done. We talked about off podcast. United Artists started out as Charlie Chaplin, Buster Keaton, and a couple of friends.
It was Chaplin, Fairbanks, Pickford, and D.W. Griffith. They were the original four. 3 huge actors, 1 huge director. That was enough.
And they walked. And they set up their own thing. And it... Yeah.
So we think there might be a new studio on the lot. House of Cheney. And House of Cheney is going to be our guy making the movies he wants to make. And I guess we're talking mid-late 30s, right? He's been pushed out by the strictures of the Hays Code. He's going to have to play clever, right? He's still bound by that. He needs to make movies that are successful, but he's going to make the movies he wants. And that means movies in the 30s that may or may not have been made, things like The Island of Dr. Moreau. He may have made that. That is a great movie.
That would work really well for what he can do.
Right. I mean, it was already a great movie. It was like Charles Lawton, Bela Lugosi. I think Bela Lugosi plays the, is he called Speaker of the Law? Great, kind of almost like proto Wolfman phase. But imagine Cheney not only doing his own makeup, but setting the pace, setting the monster effects for something like that, or other movies that could have been made but weren't because they were beyond everyone's abilities. And Chris, you and I were talking about what he would have become is the sort of pioneering makeup. Well, he was a pioneer in makeup, but had he been given longer, he would have been pushing the limits of what is possible like 20, 30, 40 years before famous makeup artists of like the 70s, like Tom Savini, the zombie makeup artist, or Rick Baker, the people who worked on things like The Howling, Night of the Living Dead, the Thriller video, right? All of that stuff. There's nothing specifically technological about all of those practical effects that we saw in the 70s and 80s.
It's a skill set, though.
Yeah.
It's a skill that Lon can carry through if he survives.
Yeah.
Can work with others and can almost create a shop where those skills don't go away and they're still in use. They still have a place to be preserved and developed.
And we were talking about what would those genres be? Yes, he's Mr. Horror, but there's a whole lot more to him than that. And a studio cannot survive on it. Well, let's say the House of Cheney Studios, it does take the lion's share of what passes for horror under the Hays Code in the 40s and 50s. But there's other genres out there. There's crime, there's war movies. And Chris, you pointed out a very interesting movie, of course, that was made, 1946?
Yes, The Best Years of Our Lives.
Right.
When you were actually initially talking about the crime boss, I believe, in his other movie.
In The Penalty. Yeah, he plays Blizzard, the amputee in The Penalty.
And in that movie we talked about, The Best Years of Their Lives, you were shocked, and I was shocked, I guess, when I first realized when this movie was made. When it came out, it was 1946. This movie is dealing with the after effects of the Second World War, and one of and it's about American servicemen coming home, and one of them is an amputee. You know what just went through my mind? Are you familiar with the novel Johnny Got His Gun?
No, tell me.
This is a real pop culture heavy episode. Because I'm gonna take 1930s horror movies and take us to 1980s heavy metal music videos. Johnny Got His Gun was a novel, I believe, by Dalton Trumbo
Okay.
about the First World War, an American service member who was a quadruple amputee, and at this point is stuck in bed.
Right.
And
Okay.
one of the early Metallica music videos is about this book. So, especially given what is culturally happening in the late 1930s, that also lends itself to some.
Could Cheney have taken? Wow. I mean, yeah. I mean, when I was talking about famous portrayals of people who have lost limbs, and obviously, in a lot of cases these days, they rightly take people, genuine people with those disabilities. But I think of Lieutenant Steve and all of that.
Lieutenant Dan.
Dan, sorry, yeah. Gary Sinise, yeah, amazing. He would do those movies, right? And if you could do Best Years of Our Lives in 1946, who knows? Would Cheney have, taken that into his studio? Would he have seen that and gone, right, well, I can, and just do some absolutely amazing All Quiet on the Western Front type remake?
Yes.
Yeah, which is obviously about World War II, but actually set in the Great War, just like other movies are supposedly about Korea, but actually about Vietnam.
Right.
And he would just go to town with the effects. Sci-fi. Well, that was the other thing we were talking about. Sci-fi
and I think
movies.
We don't necessarily, he is a heavy smoker.
Yep.
He is in his late 40s when he does die. So we don't think necessarily that he would survive that much longer. But if there is a house of Cheney, that's kind of the mecca for special effects ish. I'm going to keep calling it special effects because this was special effects at that point. What does that do if all of those skill sets are still around when we get into the 1950s? In our cinematic world, these are Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where there's aliens coming down and walking among us and secretly infiltrating our society.
Yes, I mean that's a great movie anyway. But what is that like when? And let's just say let's get Cheney up to 1950, and maybe the poor guy doesn't make it much past that, but that's okay. He's got a studio. He
set up his infrastructure that carries these things on.
He's taught his skills. He's probably attracted talent. Now we should probably mention a couple of things. Jack Pierce has probably not fared super well in the Cheneyverse. Because he doesn't get to create the iconic Frankenstein makeup. He is not Mr. Makeup. He's the other Mr. Makeup. And legendary hard to get on with. But let's just say he or the guys who followed on for him at Universal will have gravitated towards the Cheney studios. Not only that, but the talent on screen, those guys who may have been partially or totally displaced by Cheney, they're going to get their day in the sun. And it seems to me fairly reasonable that ultimately the likes of Karloff and Lugosi, who may well have flourished in this Cheney universe. In our timeline, poor Bela Lugosi did not do as well as Karloff. He often got lesser billing. He frequently was paid less. And he was treated fairly shabbily by the studios. To their credit, it was people like Boris Karloff, Basil Rathbone, and other actors who would rally round during movies like Son of Frankenstein, made sure he got a better billing. But ultimately, as a lot of us will know, Bela Lugosi did not thrive and came to a fairly lonely end, and doing a lot of really poor, what they called poverty row studio movies. I got a feeling in the Cheneyverse, the House of Cheney, Lon Cheney, he's going to be attracting these guys. There's a friendly, let's not say friendly, there is a place for them. There is a studio for them. And Cheney himself, like we say, he's not going to be acting forever. He's going to be behind the scenes. He's setting the base. Sort of like you were saying, Chris, George Lucas-ish.
Yes.
With a focus on makeup, special effects, body transformation. He's going to attract those sort of guys who are into it. And let's not forget, Lugosi and Karloff, they both played the Frankenstein monster. And in our timeline, so did a certain Lon Cheney Jr. And it occurs to me that whilst Jr. may not have turned to movie acting in the early 30s, filling the void left by his father, probably tempted by the studios. I can see him moving into the family business later on, an Alan Ladd Jr. type.
Let me ask this.
Okay.
We have expanded what the family business is. The family business is no longer just acting. The family business is this is movie.
Business. The business is business now. Yeah, right.
So when you say he moves into the family business, what do you mean? What?
He's Mr. Studio. I think Lon Chaney Jr. has moved. Yeah, it's succession time. It's he's moving into the studio. I do not know what kind of a businessman Lon Chaney Jr. was, nor his father, but for the sake of argument, I think he would probably get some on-screens time. Okay. I would love to have seen certain classic silence revisited by a Chaney studio, where the man himself, he's getting on. He can't do it. He's got but he's got a son and he's got other talent around him. Now, they, of course, in our timeline, they did Phantom of the Opera many times. They did they did Hunchback of Notre Dame again with Charles Laughton. But I'd love to see the Chaney take on it. And if it's not him, he's coaching Junior. He's got Karloff. He's got Lugosi. He's got Rathbone and all of those guys. Incidentally, Universal Studios does not. Well, I'm not saying it doesn't do well in our timeline, but it's not. There is no such thing as the Universal horror. It's the Chaney horror. Universal must go in other directions.
So this is one of those other things we kind of thought about, which is if he corners the horror market.
Yeah.
Does Universal, and I believe it's Warner, I believe, was doing like James Cagney, like
Warner Brothers, Cagney, Gangsters. They all did other stuff as well. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, so RKO did this one, and MGM did that one, and who does the musicals? Who does the family dramas?
Right. Do you kind of get, because it's when you read the biography, especially of Junior.
Yeah.
And any actor between basically like this period and the 1970s, all of their careers are split up by what studio they're with. If they move studios, that is a major turning point in their career. So you have, we mentioned Cagney.
Yeah.
Obviously, Cagney works for the people doing the gangster movies. But I'm fast forwarding a little bit. Fred Astaire would be signed with the musical producer. Do you think you kind of have that specialization when it comes to studios, or is Chaney kind of unique in that it's kind of off there as the specialist house and everybody else is kind of trying to do generic for everybody?
I think the other studios were already established with genres, and I think that continues. So I think what happens is that Chaney drags the horror genre kind of over to him. Now, these are not absolutes. Other movies did horror, other movies did gangsters, but I think they steal Universal's thunder a little bit.
I'm looking forward, and I'm like, well, wait a minute. Who did Frank Sinatra sign with, and who? Because he does a lot of other stuff as well. He crosses those genres.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Manchurian Candidate. I love Manchurian Candidate. Abbott and Costello, I hope still stay with Cheney. I don't
That's
know.
a very good
That's-
question. Yeah, Abbott and Costello are kind of because what we were talking about and thinking about is this the it's not just the actors, it's
Yeah.
the writers.
Yeah. It's the directors, you know.
I was
all of that.
personally shocked. You mentioned Succession, and to talk
Yeah.
about a modern, the show Succession, who's the producer? Will Ferrell and Adam McKay,
Yeah.
of like Talladega Nights and all, are the
Yeah.
producers of that. But generally, comedy's comedy. And so you may not have a Abbott and Costello at a studio that has access to the intellectual property of Wolfman.
No. They might go elsewhere. They might have to develop other characters. There may be other franchises that we can't even conceive of. There's a couple of other really funny little tweaks. If Boris Karloff isn't Mr. Go-To spooky voice, let's say he's still got a career. It means a couple of things. Yeah, the Monster Mash probably has a different voice. The Grinch may well have a different narrator, which may affect many a Christmas viewing. And I was thinking, spinning on, where do we get to when we get to the 70s? I think, because when you look at early 70s movie or late 60s horror, we've had Hammer. Hammer is early 50s, late 60s, and then trails off that 70s. That was the UK studio that revives the horror genre because it had fallen somewhat fallow since the Universal heydays.
Hammer,
yeah,
is the name of the studio. I've never heard of it, but
right.
I'm picturing right now. By the way, horror movies in my mind will now forever be tied to toolboxes.
So
between Hammer and Saw, it's just right there.
Oh my god. So 60-second Hammer, right? Hammer Studios, British movie studio, been around since the 30s. One of the first movies they made was The Mystery of the Mary Celeste with Bela Lugosi. Okay. They then do a load of dramas, family dramas, historical dramas, radio adaptations throughout the 40s and 50s. And then in 1958, they make Curse of Frankenstein with Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. And then for the next 10 years, they are making these Technicolor gothic horrors, which is all Frankenstein, Dracula, starring people like Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, Oliver Reed, and it's just a real institution for horror aficionados, and one of possibly the last gem of the real British movie industry before it collapsed in the 70s. I don't think Hammer's going to get that revival because I think that the Cheney studios are probably still going strong.
Just going to hoover up that talent.
Yeah. Those British actors are either going to stay in the UK making costume dramas, which is fine, and radio adaptations, or the more adventurous ones will migrate over. Probably to Roger Corman, if Roger Corman himself hasn't been sucked up by the Cheney Studios. Roger Corman famously does all of the Poe adaptations, Mask of the Red Death, House of Usher, with the likes of Vincent Price and a very young Jack Nicholson in the 50s. And again, this Corman Studios in America and Hammer Studios in Britain were both like two sides of the same coin, making these great, lurid, gothic horrors in the 50s and 60s.
Okay.
I think they're going to take a hit from our man Cheney's studio. And what that does for things later on, how it affects things like Rosemary's Baby, The Exorcist, I think so, we're out into the sticks at this point.
Yeah, I'm going to add one. I think this might be the last thing I throw at you. And please understand this is coming from out of left field, listeners. He has no idea this is coming. That this was not discussed.
Go on.
Do you what I'm kind of playing with in my head is, do you have the set of characters developing into almost like a all of us nowadays are familiar with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Do you have the Cheney Cinematic Universe?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you absolutely, because yeah, you're
Because
right,
all
Chris.
of these characters can interact with each other.
Which Universal absolutely did, right? They called them
Yeah.
Monster Mashes.
Yes.
Monster Mashes was the term for the original crossovers, which was awesome. Marvel was not the first to do it.
I'm also envisioning, by the way, into the 50s. Again, we're past his lifetime, but the organization exists.
Yeah.
Working with the entire, again, not necessarily beginning this, but incorporating and maybe bringing it to a wider audience, the Japanese horror, the Japanese monster movies.
Yeah. Yeah, they could reach out to Toho Studios, and just fold in that. The other thing I think this would be my closing thoughts. 1950s American television anthology series. We've got The Master of Suspense doing Alfred Hitchcock Presents. There's Twilight Zone from Rod Serling. There's The Outer Limits. I think that the rise of the small screen obviously has a huge effect on all studios. Some of the smart ones go into TV.
So do you think this kind of becomes, do you think, because I was always thinking, and we've mentioned it a little bit, about the house of Cheney being kind of a special effects, almost a hired gun. They don't necessarily produce all of it themselves, but they come in and they're the ones that have the tech, and it is technical expertise that an ILM has in our world. They've touched movies that Lucas himself had nothing to do with. So maybe they do get into almost kind of where we are today, where movie companies are just, they don't care how you consume it. They just produce it.
Yeah. I can totally see, Cheney Playhouse every week, with, let's say they get Karloff to do the introduction, and it's going to be a kind, and every week it's going to be just some incredible twist in the tail thing, and it's going to leave a generation of images in kids' heads or adults' heads, black and white images. Right?
I don't care what happens with the haze.
Yeah. But we're all watching it at this point, right? And
at this point, I think at this point, a lot of what they do is the after 8 o'clock.
Yeah, right. And it's going to go out, and there'll be just an incredible opening sequence. There'll be some stentorian voiceover introducing you to that. The House of Cheney is open. And it's just going to be this amazing showcase for makeup special effects, for grotesqueries, for twists in the tails. The sort of stuff that Alfred Hitchcock is doing, that Rod Serling's doing, that Roald Dahl, Tales the Unexpected, is doing in the UK.
Okay.
But it's gonna be the Cheney House of Horror or something like that. And that's just gonna leave its effect on a whole generation. I think.
So initially when by the way, I kind of lifted the curtain a little bit talking to Helena. So many of our episodes start with us saying, I don't know if this is enough, but we got on and it just kind of spiraled into what we've got, what you guys just got done listening to. So is that, I mean, are you
I think we need to leave the Cheney gang there. I think there are so many other places you could go with that, but I think we've corrected something in history there. I think I'm quite pleased about that.
Okay.
We get more movies from Lon Cheney. I hope Mr. Karloff and Mr. Cheney Jr. forgive me for torpedoing their careers. But
I mean, you didn't, if you think about it, you didn't necessarily torpedo their careers. You just you diverted Cheney Jr. into being maybe not a mogul, but a studio executive in his own right. And Karloff, because you've built up this house of Cheney, he actually has an ecosystem.
Yeah.
To get to what we said earlier, Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. He knows he's going to constantly have work.
Yeah, absolutely. And Bela Lugosi has a better career and a better life. And I think, again, that's I've been very happy with that. Very happy with that.
All right. So I think that's this episode. I just, I want to reach out and let everybody know, please reach out to us. That's, how we got Helena involved. We really love and appreciate, engagement from everybody. I also did, let Helena know that we've never met. A lot of us have never met, which is still kind of crazy.
I'm still picking my jaw up off the floor. I just assumed you all kind of met up for a fucking time barbecues.
No. When that we need to keep distance. Barbecues are very touchy subject for us.
I do, but sorry.
Yes. It's kind of like if I were to ask you if you knew a good haggis place in your neighborhood. I know that's not. I know it's wrong, and that's why I'm making the joke.
Right. I understand. Neutral territory must be first identified. You need to find like a Switzerland, I think.
Yes. But I want to encourage everybody to reach out on the Discord, on the website. Let us know what you think about our episodes. Let us know if you have ideas for episodes. Understand you will if you do give us a good one, we will probably wrangle you into doing it. That's how most of us got started. And just to close out, if one should come across a fork in time, what should they do?
They should take it.
All right. See everybody next week.
Thanks for listening to A Fork in Time, the alternate history podcast. Learn more and provide feedback by visiting our website at www.aforkintimepodcast.com. Connect to us on Facebook at facebook.com/aforkintime or follow us on Twitter at AFIT Podcast. If you want to support the show financially, visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/aforkintime. We hope you will join us next time.